Is China standing on the edge of an economic abyss? Imagine a country burdened by a debt load that exceeds the annual GDP of the US. What can this mean for the world's second largest economy? Who are the main players to blame for this crisis? Today's video is all about answering these gripping questions and to uncover the tale behind China's $23 trillion debt crisis. So don't forget to stay tuned till the end, because there's nothing more pressing than the world's second largest economy on the brink of collapse. Hegang, a small representation of China's debt crisis. In the year 2021, a remote coal town nestled in northeastern China found itself in the grips of an extraordinary financial transformation. But the aftermath of this ordeal now serves as a foreboding warning for President Xi Jinping. Meet Hegang, once a bustling city teeming with nearly 1 million souls, now on the brink of collapsing. The city made waves in the news approximately 18 months ago when its staggering debt surpassed double the amount of its meager fiscal income. Simply put, Hegang needs to have increased more than the income to cover those. Now, this marked an unprecedented event. Why? Because this was the first time a municipal administration had resorted to official emergency measures since the State Council unveiled regulations in 2016. These regulations outlined how local governments ranging from counties to provinces ought to face the perils of debt. As the dust settled, the consequences of Hegang's financial woes began to manifest. And who other than the residents bore the weight of this fiscal crackdown? Bloomberg reported that during a recent visit to the city, one could hear the murmurs of discontent among the locals. Taxi drivers, too, grieved about the increased traffic fines. Meanwhile, public school teachers anxiously whispered about rumored job cuts, and street cleaners expressed frustration with 2-month delay in receiving their hard-earned wages. Hegang, however, provides only a small example of the huge problem of local government debt. Brace yourself, for the estimations provided by analysts are truly shocking. Is COVID to blame? According to the estimates provided by Goldman Sachs Group Inc., China's government debt looms at a mind-boggling $23 trillion. Let us put that in perspective. If you were to count $1 per second, it would take you about 729,000 years to reach $23 trillion. That's the amount of dues China is under. As the numbers continue to mount, the weight of this debt burden threatens to become an endless crisis, casting a long, dark shadow that could go on for years to come. These debts, which swelled during the pandemic, are now reaching a critical point. But how did China even get here? Let's take a look. During Xi Jinping's relentless zero-COVID campaign, cities were burdened with unforeseen expenses. They spent billions of dollars on widespread testing and imposing lockdown measures. The crackdown on excessive leverage in the property market, championed by the Chinese leader, triggered a sharp decline in land sales. All of this led to depriving cities of one of their most significant revenue streams. And not surprisingly, the consequences of these circumstances are starting to unravel. Which local governments have been hit the hardest? As we navigate the intricate web of China's debt crisis, Zhong Ui, a politics professor at Stanford University specializing in China's fiscal reforms, suggests that the local government debt problem is not confined to a few isolated areas. It is thoroughly spread throughout the country. While prosperous coastal regions may possess greater opportunities and resources to repay their debts, less developed areas, like Hegang, find themselves significantly troubled. In an astonishing revelation, a whopping 2/3 of local governments are on the verge of breaching unofficial debt thresholds. These thresholds were set by Beijing to signal severe funding strain. According to calculations by S&P Global, their outstanding debt surpassed 120% of their income in 2022. The gravity of the situation becomes visible as highlighted in a survey by Rhodium Group. 1/3 of China's major cities are struggling to meet even the interest payments on their debts. In Lanzhou, the capital city of Gansu province, the interest payments alone accounted for a staggering 74% of the city's fiscal revenue in 2021. The situation intensifies further when we consider that significant chunks of debt are soon coming due. Research conducted by Lian Ratings Global, a subsidiary of a prominent domestic rating agency, reveals that approximately 84% of the $84.2 billion in offshore debt owed by local government financing vehicles will mature between this year and 2025, a ticking time bomb, if you will. Then we have Shanghai, a city nestled in China's central Henan province, home to 7.7 million people. It recently grabbed headlines when its Seoul bus service came extremely close to a complete shutdown. Can you imagine a bustling city without reliable public transportation? Meanwhile, in Wuhan and Guangzhou, proposed reductions in medical benefits for pensioners sparked rare street protests earlier this year. Even in wealthy cities like Shanghai, government employees are feeling the impact of the crisis, with reports of their salaries being reduced. This shows that even in prosperous urban areas, people who are usually seen as secure are also affected. The ripple effects of the debt crisis extend far and wide. In the Guizhou province, officials have made a desperate plea to Beijing for financial help. When those responsible for managing money have to beg for assistance, it shows how serious the situation is. How will Beijing respond to this plea? Will they intervene and offer a lifeline? Or will they remain steadfast in their pursuit of curbing debt risks? What's more severe than $23 trillion debt? The after effects of dealing with debt are more severe than the dues themselves. China's central government has long been pressuring local governments to address their debt risks, particularly the hidden debts. These are those which were accumulated through financing vehicles on behalf of municipalities, which conveniently evade the scrutiny of official balance sheets. Former Minister Liu Kun and other officials have attempted to relieve public concerns by asserting that local government finances on the whole remain stable. But is stability enough to quiet down the fears of the people? Can we truly trust that all is well beneath the surface? Now here's the crux of the matter. The primary concern isn't that cities will default, plunging the nation into a full-blown financial crisis, although economists caution that this possibility cannot be entirely dismissed. Rather, it's the consequential action cities may have to take to appease their creditors. The perfect example of this has played out recently, when Zunyi Road and Bridge Engineering Construction Group, a local government financing vehicle hailing from Guizhou, keeping in mind this is a province burdened with extensive debt, struck a deal with banks. The agreement granted them an additional 20 years to repay loans amounting to over $2 billion. This development, however, sparked fears that other banks might also be compelled to shoulder the burden of restructuring costs. Now picture this: spending cuts, delayed investments, and a host of other measures aimed at staving off financial collapse. Such actions have the potential to affect growth for years to come, painting a bleak future for China's economic landscape. Will this mounting pressure lead to a tipping point, triggering a more severe crisis? Only time can tell. Beijing's reluctancy and President Xi's strategies. Curiously, some analysts argue that Beijing seems reluctant to implement changes that could establish a more stable financial foundation for local governments. For instance, the notion of introducing a property tax to generate additional funds is met with resistance. Policymakers are hesitant to take strong action because they worry it might make them unpopular and undermine the central government's control over local areas. Will this reluctance to tackle underlying issues hinder the long-term stability of local government finances? As the crisis deepens, alternative options emerge, one of which involves selling state assets. However, this path runs contrary to President Xi's strategic objectives, which prioritize utilizing state entities to attain goals like technological self-sufficiency. How will China navigate this delicate balancing act? Can they find a middle ground that both addresses the debt crisis and aligns with the overarching objectives of the central government? The fate of local government finances hangs in the balance, and the decisions made in Beijing will reverberate throughout the nation. Will China find the resolve to implement necessary changes even if they come at a political cost? How can they ensure financial stability without compromising strategic aspirations? These are critical questions that demand answers as the nation struggles with the profound effects of its debt crisis. What do you think Beijing should do? Leave a comment below and subscribe for more, as this is a developing story.